Well, good evening. We'll go ahead and get started. Director Joshua Meyer, Director of Public Safety here in Canton Township. I want to welcome you to our opioid forum. We are on a limited time frame tonight. My hope is to get everybody out of here within 2 hours. That is the goal, but we got a lot of information we would like to cover. And so I want to first start with introductions. To my right is Deputy Director Chad Baugh, Deputy Chief Craig Wilshire. To my left is Deputy Director of the Fire Department, Chris Stockline, and Deputy Chief Jamie Strasner. And then our guest panels over here is Brian Spitzbergen from GrowthWorks, also representing FAN, Families Against Narcotics, Pat Stropes from GrowthWorks, the Honorable Judge Plakas from the 35th District Court, Bruce McCoy from the DEA, and Kurt Tukiskowitz from Plymouth Canton Community Schools. And then I got Barb Caruso, who's my administrative assistant. She's responsible for the PowerPoint you'll see tonight. In the back of the room, I have Supervisor Pat Williams. Denise Bima, she's my secretary. She's been instrumental in coordinating an effort between four agencies altogether, including Canton Township, in tracking opioid overdoses. And those agencies are Canton, Livonia, City of Westland, and Northville Township, and we're collaborating that data and working together on some projects that you'll hear about tonight. Also, Sergeant Dave Isle, the Canton Police Department, he's in charge of our school resource officers. Also tonight, we have some guests out here with us tonight from FAN, which is Dara Cockrum, the director of the Wayne County chapter, and Lauren Russo, the president of the Northwest Wayne County chapter. We also have a table, and I don't know if they're here, for the Detroit-Wayne Mental Health Authority. And so with that, we're going to start with a quick video. This is a 2020 video. The full-length video is available on the link below, but this is just a quick version of the full-length video.
ABC News investigation tonight, the heroin epidemic in America. Tonight, this number, 129 people die every day in this country from a drug overdose. The vast majority related to pain pills or heroin. That's more deaths than from car accidents and from guns. Tonight, the Senate just passing legislation that would create grants to help local communities. And it comes just a day before our year-long investigation. Breaking point, heroin in America, families sounding the alarm. And tonight here, your first look. In suburban neighborhoods across America, the calls are coming in.
An overdose.
All of them heroin overdoses.
21-year-old male in cardiac arrest. 69-year-old female. Possible overdose.
In Manchester, New Hampshire, we're there when a panicked driver calls 911 with what he finds at a busy intersection.
I got a white male, approximately 25 years old. He's blue in the face, so I need help now.
You can hear him trying to revive the young man. Across town, veteran medic Chris Hickey gets the call.
How quickly do you have to get there if there's a chance of saving this person's life?
Within the first 5 minutes.
He arrives to find a young man who authorities believe couldn't wait to get home from work, shooting up in his car. The panicked driver who called 911, a father on his way home from work. He tells us he gave that young man mouth to mouth because he knew what he was witnessing. It is everywhere, even in his own home.
You know something, I lost my son to a drug overdose. Thank God I didn't have to do what I did for him. I miss him dearly. We need to do something. We have a problem in our country. We have to do something about it. Period.
Over the course of a year, we've met so many parents who never thought it would be their child. Sabrina Bimbenek.
Spencer's world was football. The boy loved to play.
Doug Griffin.
Courtney was a lot of fun. She would bring a smile to everybody's face.
4 out of 5 new heroin users begin with prescription pain pills.
Spencer got hurt in a game.
The OxyContin.
We see there are no boundaries. Rich, poor, the middle class. Pills, then heroin.
Spencer switched over to heroin.
Heroin.
The police came to my door at 1 o'clock in the morning and said my son was gone.
And the children who see it in their own neighborhoods, some in their own home.
How many of you have seen the needles?
The emergency so great, 11 and 12-year-olds are now being taught how to administer naloxone, Narcan as some call it, to bring someone back from a heroin overdose. Incredibly eye-opening and brave families allowing us into their homes for more than a year, and you will see what it's like for parents trying to help their children break free from heroin.
The reason we chose this video is what you see in the video is really no different than what we're seeing in Canton Township. As the video says, there are no boundaries. This impacts all socioeconomic classes, it affects all races, and it affects people in Canton Township. You're going to see numbers a little bit later of some of the amount of overdoses and the amount of calls that our fire and police department respond to. And you're also going to see the number of calls that our police department goes to that are not overdose related. So this is also, there's crime that occurs as a result of the opioid epidemic. And so there's a lot of different factors. This became personal to me about 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago. I was noticing calls. We do a daily update, and I was seeing calls, opioid overdose calls come in that our fire department, our police department was responding to. And over a period of about 48 hours, we responded on a gentleman 3 times. The first 2 times that we responded on this gentleman, we were able to revive him. Our fire department was able to get there in time, administer Narcan, and transport him to a hospital. On the 3rd time, we weren't able to get there in time. We weren't able to revive him, and unfortunately, this gentleman passed away. To me, that was unacceptable. It was unacceptable that we had a gentleman that overdosed 3 times, and we weren't able to get this person the proper help to save his life. So I started having conversations with our team, Lieutenant Mike Steckel, who couldn't be here tonight. We reached out to GrowthWorks and Brian Spitzberg and Pat Stropes, and we set up a meeting. And at a conference room table in the fire department, we kind of talked about what can we do? What can we do different? Because what we're doing now isn't working. It's not saving lives. We're not reducing this epidemic. It's getting worse every day. And the things that we're doing, administering Narcan is great, but that's not fixing the problem. We're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. We're not going to Narcan our way out of this problem. So what can we do? And on a napkin, we kind of decided that we have to figure out a way to have intervention. We have to figure out a way that when we transport these people to the hospital, we're able to get them help. We're able to get them treatment. We have to train our police officers and our firefighters to be empathetic. We have to train them to recognize the addiction. It's not something, I mean, we go on these calls, but we don't always recognize where there's an addiction. So we have to figure out ways to recognize that. And then we have to work with our partners, and we have our partners here tonight, and work together collaboratively to try to figure out a resolution to this. So that's kind of what you're going to hear about tonight. And it really covers 3 things. One, we're going to talk about the scope of the problem, understanding opioid addiction. What is the magnitude of the problem in Canton Township? How does it impact the Canton community? How does it impact our agencies? And then we're going to talk about what are we doing about the problem. So we're going to take this kind of 3-pronged approach tonight. What's the magnitude of the problem? What are we doing about the problem? And what does the future hold for Canton Township? And then most importantly, it doesn't end tonight. We have to continue looking at this. We have to continue evaluating where we're at, where we've been, where we're going, and what are we going to continue to do to try to solve this problem. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Spitzbergen, who's going to kind of kick us off tonight and talk about his portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Josh, and good evening, everybody. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here. And I'd like to kind of take a little bit off of what Josh said about to know where we've come since we made that sketch on a napkin has really been amazing, because there has been some amazing progress in terms of being able to deliver and start to implement some strategies in the community and in the region that will help change, kind of what has been the unfortunate normal for a long time. GrowthWorks is a human service agency that provides behavioral health and substance abuse treatment to adolescents and adults. So my stake in this as an administrator there and as a therapist by trade was watching the kids and the young adults in this community kind of evolve into, having worked with kids coming back as young adults, basically right out of the hospital, right off an overdose, where it used to be, and I'll speak to the nature of addiction in a second, that it seemed to take a lot more time for the disease of addiction to progress. And so one of the consequences of opioids becoming a factor in addiction now is that you see the process happen in a much more accelerated rate. And so it was pretty frightening. to see the effect and the impact that it was having on people at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And so it's exciting to be sitting here, and it's exciting to have people in the room who want to know more about this. So we appreciate every one of you being here tonight. So I'm going to speak a little bit about just kind of understanding addiction and opioid addiction. And in general, when we talk about addiction we really know now is a brain disease. It's a disease that affects the brain and how the brain operates. Some of the easiest ways to kind of look at that is that when a person is in their active state of addiction, the brain is actually in a traumatized state. So a person has a very limited ability to choose. And so one of the things that's been really a fascinating process to kind of work through is getting a community understanding that addiction isn't something where people are choosing to behave badly. They're in a state of mind where they really aren't in a place to choose anymore. And we know, and certainly many are familiar with other kinds of traumas that people experience in a traumatized brain state, like PTSD and other kinds of traumas like that. And the effect can be profound, and it can be extraordinarily damaging to a person. So if we kind of look at addiction through the lens of being a brain disease and the effect that it would have on somebody, especially when you factor in opioid use, we're talking about a very significant impact. So when that choice becomes disrupted and the person is unable to choose, we're working on the premise then that, you know, a person's ability to make a decision, to make the right decision to get help or seek opportunities to get help are just not going to be there. It's just not going to be something that a person's going to choose to do because their opportunities for that are extraordinarily limited. When the brain is in that state, critical thinking is impaired, long-term planning is impaired. If anybody's ever known anybody who's an addict or an alcoholic, then you've probably experienced that firsthand. Why do they make the decisions that they do? How come they can't long-term plan? A lot of that has to do with the brain being in a very constant, anxious state. And when the brain is constantly anxious and constantly in a place where you're in a, you know, basically in a state of, you know, kind of fright, if you will, there's going to be struggle with attention, there's going to be a struggle with decision making and making judgments that have anything other than I need to relieve this kind of traumatic feeling. And so this is an illness that needs attention, and what's amazing is that unfortunately, it's starting to get the attention that it needs, but it's also very fortunately that we're in a place now that we can start to look at some solutions to the problem. Because it's great that we're starting to, you know, that we're starting to get the word out and the information out that there's a problem, but some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, as Josh referenced, is some of the directions that we're trying to go to find some solutions to really help people and get people the kind of help they need to be in the time and the place when they're going to be most amenable to get the help. I think I'm probably ahead of the PowerPoint at this point, so I don't know where we are or if I still need to keep going.
Real quick and then continue on.
1990s, the Macarena dance craze was taking over the country, and millions were scrambling to prepare for the end of the world as they knew it. Y2K, and pain was introduced to the medical community as the fifth vital sign, giving pain equal status with pulse, respiration, blood pressure, and body temperature.
So we were trained around that time. There was a big push to ask more about pain. They talk about the fifth vital sign, asking a question 1 through 10, you know, what's your pain scale? Even if patients weren't in the hospital for anything to do with pain, they still had to ask for it.
In the midst of that, the FDA approved a Schedule II opioid called Oxycontin for the treatment of moderate to severe long-term pain. And its drug maker, Purdue Pharma, launched the most aggressive marketing campaign in pharmaceutical history.
I got my life back now. Now I can enjoy every day that I live.
According to the Government Accountability Office, they funded over 20,000 pain-related educational programs for medical professionals, many held at universities and hospitals, all claiming addiction to Oxycontin was rare. The benefits, nothing short of a miracle. In 1998, the Federation of State Medical Boards announced that practitioners wouldn't be disciplined based on how much or how often they prescribed opioids. And then, in 2001, the Joint Commission, the federal body in charge of hospital accreditation, published a guide on pain management. It was sponsored by Purdue Pharma.
They were truly in bed with Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin.
At the time, Dr. Brent Bielewski was just finishing up medical school.
Just on-the-job training, you see what your attendings and senior residents do, and if it's working good for them.
From 1996 to 2002, OxyContin prescriptions increased from 300,000 to more than 7 million. Other opioid painkillers saw significant increases as well.
You come out of residency being comfortable with some of those medications, you start a new practice, a lot of new patients come in, they have back pain, this and that, and you start prescribing hydrocodone or Vicodin was big back then.
Then in 2007, nearly 10 years after OxyContin hit the market, Purdue Pharma pleaded guilty to felony charges of misbranding a drug with intent to defraud and mislead. They paid out a $600 million settlement, but it was too late. The damage was done. Opioid overdose deaths were skyrocketing. Thousands more were addicted, and a guy I grew up with in church youth group got injured on the job. We'll call him Tom.
And I hurt my back real bad, and I couldn't walk for several months. They put me on a lot of different pain meds, like fentanyl patches, morphine, Oxycontins, Percocets.
But the pills soon lost their power, and after a year, he was on the highest dose his health insurance would cover. It still wasn't enough.
It got to the point where I was taking my 30-day scripts in 2 weeks. And then for the last 2 weeks, I would have to buy them from other sources. I need to keep working, keep functioning, paying the bills, raising my daughter. If I don't have them, I can't do that.
One day, his non-legal pain pill supplier offered him something else. It was cheaper than pills.
This year has cost $10, one line, and you're good for the whole day.
Heroin, a drug he never imagined considering, but
I did try it, and 5-10 minutes later, next thing I know, I was like, what back problems? Jumping around, doing jumping jacks. I haven't felt pain relief like that in several years.
just like pills, he developed a tolerance, and the relief didn't last.
When $10 a day wasn't working anymore. So they needed $20 a day, and then $40 a day, and then $60 a day, and up to $125 a day. I was selling everything off in my house that I could from day to day to continue to pay for everything.
Even stealing from family members and friends.
I can't believe the person I turned into, and everybody I lied to and hurt, all the ones I love.
According to the latest CDC report, about 3 out of 4 people addicted to heroin started off using opioid painkillers. Most legitimately prescribed to themselves or a family member. Michigan currently ranks 10th for writing the most number of opioid prescriptions in the nation. A trend Dr. Bielewski is working to reverse by teaching medical students 2 days a week.
The intention of physicians is I would, 99% good. I just think as we go forward and learn more and more about this epidemic, hopefully we'll prescribe less and less.
While those already addicted
You get injured, you get those kind of pills, it can happen to anybody.
fight to turn their life around.
I would rather put up with the pain from my back than the pain of hurting my loved ones the way I did.
Tom is now 104 days clean and counting.
I had a good life before all this, and I want to continue having a good life after all this.
Jennifer Ann Wilson, 7 Action News.
All right, Brian, is there anything you want, I know you touched on some of this stuff. Is there
I
anything
hit
you
all,
want to
actually
add?
hit all that. We can move on to Kurt.
Good?
Yep, we're good.
All right, we'll pass the mic to Kurt Tiskowitz from the Plymouth Canton Community Schools. We have a really good relationship with the school district, and we're continuing to work with them on an education campaign and working with the schools on a regular basis. So Kurt?
Thank you, Josh. First, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to take part in this panel and to represent Plymouth Canton Community Schools. You know, as a school district, we have over 17,000 students in our district, and this is something that we're very fortunate that it hasn't hit us very hard, but it has hit us. We took a look at some of the suspension data that we've had for the last 10 to 12 years, and out of the 6,200 students approximately that we have at our educational park, we fare pretty well. We're fortunate to have some great kids who aren't in trouble a lot, but we do have some problems. We looked at the suspension data for the last 10 or 12 years, and it ranges in years between about 20 suspensions to up to 60 a year. And not all of those were opioid suspensions, but they were drug-related. Things like possession of drugs like marijuana or, the medical or the pharma type drug. When we looked at dug a little deeper into the data, we discovered that we had about 6 students, 3 males, 3 females, in all ethnicities. We had 4 white Middle Eastern students. We had 1 Hispanic and 1 Indian Pacific student. So as you heard in the video, it impacts all walks of life, and it's not something that is not present in terms of our data. The district, as Josh said, is very proactive. We have the luxury of having 3 school resource officers in our schools every day. Their presence in schools provides education for the students. They are in our classrooms talking to our students, teaching our students about the law, about things that are up and coming in terms of what's out on the street, and we're very fortunate to have that partnership. In addition to our high school SROs, we also have the team program that we offer in our other schools. They go in and they teach and they educate and they mentor our young students and provide that information to the students at a young age. So trying to be very proactive in the work that we do with our students. We are fortunate to also have the assistance of the Canton Police Department and Western Wayne County to do canine drug sweeps. The kids at the park know this is something that we do annually. We sweep our parking lots to make sure that they know that we're trying to be proactive and we don't want drugs on our campus. In addition to the SROs that are doing our work in our classroom, we're fortunate to have some of the programs that we offer in our health and life skills, life management classes, and our teachers are talking to them about the impact of drug use on their bodies and on their life. And some of the things that we're not, I guess, that we have an impact in terms of the parents. Although it's not impacting our students, the impact on the students is in a correlation with the parent use. If a parent is using, it does have an impact on the student at school. So we're dealing with situations where the students are coming to school, talking about it or seeing it in the home, and so that's a concern for us. So having this panel and bringing awareness to the epidemic that's out there, I think, is important, and it'll certainly help us in the long run with our students. So I'm very fortunate to take part, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks, Kurt. Turn it over to Deputy Director Stockline and Deputy Chief Strasner. We're going to kind of talk about the impacts that the opioid epidemic has had on our fire department.
All right, so the slide that we're looking at right now is a 3-year data set that kind of establishes the types of patients that we've been encountering. We use information like this to develop training and, train our medics to be able to observe, certain characteristics to be on the lookout for. So basically associating risk assessment. As you can see, all the numbers are total contacts, which basically describes any patient that we encounter that has any sort of opioid history. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're overdosing. They could just have a history of having an opioid issue. We know that primarily we're running on males who are in their mid-30s and white. And as you can see, in 2017, we've also had a significant increase in non-residency of 80 contacts of opioid situations. The other column there that talks about Narcan, how many times it's been administered, as well as the dosing. So we track how many times we've administered it, but the dosing is also important to us, as many times we're giving more than 1 dose of Narcan to a patient in distress. We can go to the next slide. This slide, which is probably has some of the more alarming data that we've been finding, and this is another increase of overdoses that we've been finding, and this trend continues to increase for 2018 as well. As you can see, the overdose totals there went from 56 to 75. And then even more pronounced is the ones that the patients that we found that have been deceased, that it also continues to increase. The numbers for 2018 are in line with these numbers to possibly eclipse those numbers as well. Obviously, we don't have them fully yet, but we're on track to increase those numbers, so that's not a good sign for us. Some of the things that the director mentioned earlier about the training of our paramedics to, identify these patients quicker. We've established some new criteria for our electronic patient care reporting software to ask some important questions of the patients, such as, are you willing to seek treatment, and have you ever been in a treatment program before? Those are things that we never looked at before at all. And, with this type of epidemic that we're experiencing, I mean, we're trying to evolve with the problem, try to come up with a solution.
So as you can see, this is just a random run that we pulled out of the computer, one of the opioid overdoses that we ran on. And this just kind of gives you guys a time frame of how it operates. So our dispatch will receive that call, and from the time that they receive that call to the time that they can get the ambulance and the fire engine en route is usually about a minute or just under a minute. And then from that time, it takes those firefighters, from the time that they receive that call from dispatch, another minute to get out to their vehicles, start the vehicles up, get on the road. And then you'll see in that en route to scene time, that's usually about 3 minutes. So that's about an average run time, about 5.5 minutes. Just like the news article said, we need to get there in that first 5 minutes to make a difference, right? So Canton's very fortunate with our response times and our manning, so that we can get to those patients in that quick manner. It's not always the case, but we do our best to get to that scene. And you can see that once we get to the scene, it often takes, a minute or a minute and a half to get to that patient, depending on where they're located. If they're in a basement or if they're outside, it could be as little as 5 seconds, right? But we're always quick on the scene, and you can see there about 12, 13 minutes. That's about the most time that we'll spend on the scene. And that time is spent with the 4 medics that respond, 2 in the engine and 2 in the ambulance. They'll do the treatment, right? They'll start the IVs, they'll put the monitors on, they'll start medication, the Narcan for them. And you'll notice that, like the deputy chief said, that our doses are going up on the Narcan, and that has to do a lot with the way that the dope's being cut, right? So they're putting fentanyl in there. It's being strong. It's stronger and stronger. And over those 3 years, you see that trend go up. So we end up administering more and more Narcan to combat this issue. But at the end of the day, we end up spending about an hour and a half on each one of our runs. 4 personnel, right? 2 of them will clear the run and head back to the station, be ready to respond for another run. But I mean, you're looking at 139 runs last year times four guys, hour and a half each. I mean, we're talking 800 plus hours of manpower. 20,000 plus labor hours or dollars to pay for labor. That doesn't include our apparatus or our supplies that we have to put in there. So it's quite an impact on our budget, and it's quite an impact on our department. As we're out on these runs, it's hard for us to come up with 4 other personnel to respond to heart attacks or anything else that may be happening in the community. So it really takes away from our resources and our ability to respond to the rest of the community while these runs are happening. And then, like the deputy chief said, we're continuing to go on these and go on these and go on these, and it wears down on our personnel as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
I think that's an important component to point out, is that the toll this takes on our police officers and our firefighters, and that's, I think, the critical component that we're working on, is helping them understand addiction. If they don't understand addiction and they don't understand why we're continuously going on the same person, it makes it difficult for us. So we're working with Pat Stropes, and he's been gracious enough to come in and train all of our police roll call, and train all of our police officers and understanding addiction and things like that. And he's also rolling out a program for our fire department. So it allows our personnel to be a little bit more empathetic when we're going on these calls, and understand that this is an illness. This isn't a choice that somebody's making. It's an illness. So, Deputy Chief Craig Wilshire.
Right, from the police side, to understand the opioid problem, we had to try to define what contacts were, and how many contacts our law enforcement officers had that had some opioid connection. So as we looked at it, we had to dig deeper into it. And you look at, there's a couple obvious ones: overdoses and death investigations, and then possession arrests had opioid connections. The one thing that we were surprised by, and actually was the help of our friends at GrowthWorks to understand, is that accidents. So you saw in the first video, the gentleman had to administer CPR on a young man who was coming home, and he could not wait till he got home in order to shoot up. So what happens a lot of times we're finding out with post-interviews with some of these addicts is that they were involved in accidents because they were doing that activity. And the problem we're having is, we had in the past, is our officers weren't equipped or didn't have the training to identify those types of accidents that people were actually using. So when we talk about operating while intoxicated, operating while intoxicated is a little bit easier to identify because of the smell of alcohol and other factors that the officers are trained on. Whereas operating while under the influence of a drug is a little bit more difficult. So one of the proactive measures that we've taken as an organization is trained our officers in what's called ARIDE, which is Advanced Roadside Impaired Driving Enforcement, which helps them try to identify those opioid type driving behaviors and things that will identify them as being under the influence of drugs. So that's one of the things that we've done proactively to try to help identify this problem and take care of it. One of the other issues we continue to find are assaults and family troubles. Families are now sick of the person's lifestyle, the things that they're doing, the thefts, and they're getting into arguments and assaultive behaviors, which are now bringing the police into the family home and into their issues. And then also retail frauds. At some point in time, the addicts have to move away from stealing from the family members and go to moving to stealing from retail stores to support their habits, which will be talked about a little bit further when we get into organized retail crime when the deputy director speaks of it. So we'll move into when we talk about context. So as we look deeper, we look through 2016 and 2017, and we identified in 2018 that when we looked at the opioid context, we had 218 of them. And then 2017, they went up to 274, which is a 26% increase in opioid contacts. As you see, the 492 contacts, as the fire department said, that they have, of those 492 contacts, only 148 of them had police or fire involvement, whereas our police officers were dealing with another 344 outside of that. So we're talking about those family troubles and the retail frauds, possessions, and overdoses. So it's taking a lot of police resources to try to combat this problem from that. But we know as an organization that we can't arrest our way out of this issue. So that's why we've come together with our partners at GrowthWorks to try to work forward with that. And this trend continues. Looking at the numbers for January 1st of 2017 to May 31st of 2017, there was 111 opioid contacts. In January 1st of 2018 to May 31st of 2018, it's 138. So there's a 24% increase in 2018. So they continue to grow with these contacts. So as an organization, we continue to take proactive steps in order to, with working with our partners, in order to combat this issue and get ahead of it, because we know we cannot arrest our way out of this issue.
Greg, I'll turn it over to the Honorable Judge Plakas.
Director, I appreciate the invitation to be here this evening. My name's Jim Plakas. I'm currently the Chief Judge at the 35th District Court. Serves the Canton community, both of the Plymouths and both of the Northvilles. And it's been an interesting watch over the last few years, the increase in incidents of people who have come through the court system whose lives have been touched by opioids and other drugs. It's overwhelming at times. It's mentally exhausting at times. And it becomes very mentally exhausting when you're looking at these people and you're trying to help them, and it's not an exact science in helping these people because everybody is different. Everyone's problems are different. Everyone's situation at home is different. So it requires a lot of attention and care by the court and by the people surrounding that person in their life. And we have noticed a significant increase in possession of heroin cases, fentanyl, cocaine, Oxycontin, and Vicodin in recent years, increase in possession of a controlled substance cases where it's something prescribed, but it's something that the person in possession of it, it wasn't prescribed to them. And it's not uncommon that that's a situation where something's prescribed to an adult, to a parent, and one of the children in the family got a hold of it, and it's not uncommon that they're taking those opioids to schools and they're selling them to other kids. That is not uncommon either. So it just kind of spreads, it spider webs the impact this has on everybody. There's an increase in theft-related crimes because of this. It's often tracked back to a need to feed an addiction. A lot of these people have a difficult time holding a job, finding employment. Best way to get money is to steal, and that impacts everyone. And don't think it just happens at a store, because I'm assuming if you read the Hometown Life papers, you're seeing how many auto break-ins there are in our communities on a daily basis. And it seems like they're increasing each year. And when I look at a file and I track a criminal history, I see that it's not uncommon that these thefts are related to trying to feed the addiction. You steal it, you sell it, you feed the addiction by taking that money to buy your drugs or your opioids. We have an increase, as Deputy Chief was saying, an increase in, he commented on operating while under the influence of or being impaired by a controlled substance or a drug. People always just seem to think that we have drunk drivers on our streets. It's not only people who are under the influence of alcohol, it is also oftentimes the influence of a controlled substance, just as dangerous. And in those cases, actually, are, when you're talking about time consuming and the weight it puts on a police department, in those instances, you're not just taking someone to the police station and having them submit to a data master or a breathalyzer, some people refer to it as, where you give a breath test. There's no way to read it. You got to take them to the hospital. You get a search warrant to have their blood drawn. You're sitting there with that person. You're relying on a lab tech to draw the blood. The blood ultimately has to go on to the Michigan State Police Department Forensic Science Division. They test it. They have to send it back to the prosecutor's office. There's a lot of time and energy that goes into these things. It's just more weight and more pull on these police departments. Deaths of users, we're seeing it in the court. We have one of our probation officers here tonight, and we were just discussing a recent case we had. We had an addict. He was into many things, but huffing was one of them. And I believe it may have been in the fall, if I'm not mistaken, while he was going through the system in our court, and he had a lengthy criminal history. And you often wonder, when you look at all the contacts an individual's had with a court, did the court fail him? And some people just can't be helped, but I often wonder, was this person handled correctly? He was clearly struggling, and the sister of the defendant, while his case was pending, called our probation officer, Mr. Hand, and let him know that this individual had killed himself by setting himself on fire. So, this stuff is real, and it's very ugly, but there is help out there. And you got amazing people, like all these people here. There is help out there. Homelessness, very common. Believe it or not, I counted just this week, knowing we were coming here today, I've had 7 people this week tell me they were homeless. So there's people who don't even have a place to stay. Now, oftentimes it's because they can't afford a job. No one's going to hire them because they may have a criminal history for this, but not only that, but for theft crimes. Oftentimes it's because the family is just so exhausted and so lost and at their wits' end, they've told the person they have to leave. So that is not uncommon. It's hard to help a person in that situation because they don't have a stable footing to rely upon where you can work with them and get them the help they need. They're bouncing back and forth from place to place, and if they don't have a stable place to stay, it's really hard for them to put the energy and the focus into their well-being and their health. People failing at or withdrawing from school, incredibly common, and just destruction to the families. It's absolute devastation. I have parents in my court all the time. And the crying that goes on there, and people, a lot of them hold it together, and then you hear them, they lose it when they're in the hallway. And you can just see the frustration in their face. It's incredibly sad, it really is. But there is help, and that's, again, why everyone's here today, and why I believe this is going to be on cable TV, is to let people know that there is help out there. Thank you.
Judge Plikus. So as I said, kind of a three-pronged approach tonight. So that's the scope of the problem, the magnitude. And as you can see, the problem's increasing. It's not going away. It's not decreasing. We're not hiding it. We're not hiding behind it. We know there's a problem. We know there's a problem not only in our community, but Southeast Michigan as a region. And so what are we going to do about it? And we've decided in Canton to take a multi-pronged approach. Number one, we need to treat the patient. When we go on overdose patients, that's got to be priority number one. First and foremost, get them treatment, get them out of that overdose. And then number two is get them help. And not only are we talking about our patients or our opioid addicts that are overdosed that we're going to get help, we're also looking at if we go on a retail fraud and the suspect says, I'm stealing to support a habit, we need to get that person help. We can't wait till they overdose to get them help. We have to proactively look at getting people help. And number three is the accountability. It's accountability for the addict, but it's also accountability for those that are supporting the addict. And some of the things that we're looking at and some of the approaches that we've taken in Canton Township, we're putting a significant amount of resources into our organized retail crime. We have a significant problem with theft, as the judge said. Theft and retail crime in Canton Township is a significant problem. And under Deputy Director Baugh's leadership, we started interviewing suspects. And what we learned was a lot of the suspects that we were arresting for retail fraud were committing those crimes or committing those theft crimes to support a habit. And so a couple of things, and Deputy Director Baugh will go into greater detail, is we're going after those fences. We're going after those places and those people that are going to support those addicts and allow those addicts to sell stolen merchandise so that they can turn a profit on it. We're also significantly going after dealers. So we in Canton Township, when there's a heroin-causing death, when somebody dies of an overdose, we actively involve our state, local, and federal, primarily our federal partners, in investigating those crimes, and Deputy Director Baugh will talk about some of our success in that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Stockline, who's going to talk about some of the things that the fire department is doing to combat this problem.
So really, we're the first line, right? I mean, we're the ones that show up there first, and we're the ones that are placed in the position to save this person's life before we can even get them help. So we're going to continue that movement, right? Over the past couple years, we've really made an effort of outfitting all of our vehicles. So all of our front-run vehicles now, every single engine, every single ambulance, we are all ALS certified paramedics. So everybody that's on every single vehicle is able to administer this medication. So that goes a long way. If an ambulance is out on another run and only an engine's responding and we're waiting for another ambulance from a different station, we can kind of wait for that. And those paramedics that are on scene first can administer that medication to save that life. And we'll continue that training. Our last vehicle is our heavy rescue, and we're in the process of making that advanced life support right now. And then every single front-run vehicle will have that medication on it. We continue to train our paramedics. There's always updates, new ways to treat patients. We're going to continue to stay on the cutting edge of that. And then, like I said earlier, part of our approach is to give mental health wellness for police and firefighters. So we're working on that as well. You know, like we said, or the director said earlier, you know, if our medics go on the same patient 3 times in a day and they end up losing that patient, it takes a toll on them as well. So that's our approach from the fire department. We'll continue to support the police department with those transports for those, you know, blood transfusions, I'm sorry, not transfusions, blood draws, like the judge said. We continue to help out in any way that we can, and we'll be the first responders there for that initial help.
Thank you, Chris. We're gonna do questions at the end, if possible, yes. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Brian Spitzberg, and Brian's going to talk about this is really the critical piece of all of this, and that's that after we bring somebody back, it's that treatment. It's recognizing the addict, getting them the help they need, and really that's a partnership between GrowthWorks, St. Mary's, and FAN. And Brian's going to talk about that critical piece that started on a napkin and has, I think, grown into something really cool.
And I wanted to reference the napkin again because I wanted to just kind of touch on a couple things that were brought up earlier. You know, when you think about for years the resources that probably could have been utilized differently if we had a different approach to this. Like moving forward, we're really positioning the community in the area to better utilize resources to help people when we start talking about this. And this data that was talked about earlier, right now, we're working with people when they're probably at their lowest. And as I kind of transition into this pivotal moment, most of the folks that we're talking about that are going to have access to help at this point in time are going to be people that are in such a desperate spot that there's not going to be a lot of recoveries for them after, if they're in a position of, being, revived from an overdose. So the data that we're talking about in this three-pronged approach really speaks to the fact that as we get better at identifying when this pivotal moment that I'm going to speak to occurs, we're going to be able to help people earlier in the process, which means longer lifespans, less resources allocated to people going through the process over and over and over again, and more opportunities for people to be happy, productive, healthy, sober citizens. So the approach over time, we're really enthusiastic about the fact that over time, this is an approach that can start to really move the needle in terms of helping people earlier and their lives aren't so devastated. And because all of the things that we hear over and over about this issue is, Judge had made reference to a case, we were talking, earlier about the increase, in having to use multiple, revival, with naloxone. We really want to move away from that and into a process where we can make identifying an earlier opportunity, which means more opportunities for recovery and sobriety. So I'm going to speak to the pivotal moment, and the pivotal moment we're going to call kind of a moment of clarity, if you will. And so what we're looking for when, I spoke earlier, addiction's about a traumatized brain state, but what will happen for people in addiction is there'll be a point, a moment, a short window of time where they'll say, I can't stand using anymore, I can't imagine being sober, but I got to do something. This is the moment that we really want to capture. This is the important moment where if we're going to get people help, this is the place that we need to be ready for. The problem with that is in the past is that we haven't really always been ready for that. And there's all kinds of systemic issues as to why that was. But the opioid epidemic made it clear that we needed to really change how we address this because we're getting to people too late. And so what we're proposing now is that, when we have whatever, wherever a person is in the community, where we're going to meet them where they're at. And all these trainings that we're referring to, whether it be at the court, with the fire department, the police department, or just out in the community in general, is if a person is in crisis and they need help, then we're going to get it for them right away. Because it has to be that way. If we don't do that, then we're missing the opportunity because a person's going to go right back into that traumatized brain state and they're not going to hear anything about getting help. Because the anxiety, the depression again will take over and we'll lose them. And anybody that's dealt with this firsthand will know that there is a window, but it's not very long. So we want to be prepared to capture the moment because then if we do, we have an opportunity for recovery, an opportunity to become a person to become a recovering person. The percentages can go up exponentially. We really can start to have a significant impact. We can move to the next slide. So a few years ago when we were sketching this out on a napkin, one of the community partners that we ended up bringing in was St. Mary's Hospital. And really it was about a knock on the door and said, look, we have all these people overdosing in our area. Tell me about the protocol. Tell me what happens. And they said, well, we medically revive them and then we, make sure they're medically clear and we give them a referral. So the problem with that is that when people are in that state, because they're still in that traumatized brain state, when they're in the hospital in the ER and they get medically cleared with a referral, they're going to go right back out to using, or try to commit suicide. And either way, they're either dead or they're put into a part of the system that they might not necessarily belong. And the great part of it is we had this conversation. They're like, we need to do something different. And so with all the community partners that are here tonight, conversations began about how can we change this? What can we do about this? And so I'm going to speak specifically for a moment about the St. Mary's Hospital project, which was really about reducing devastation in our communities. You know, the toll, as was spoken to a little bit, you know, the financial toll, the human toll, the toll on public safety, and all of our community resources have been extraordinarily strained by this. And so if we could offer opportunities, and this was the discussion with the hospital, to have immediate beds available and a whole new treatment protocol that focused on reducing the anxiety and the traumatized brain state and help people get emotionally regulated again, that we could potentially reduce deaths, readmissions, and assist the community in helping people sustain recovery. And so over the past 3 years, we have moved towards an idea that is coming into fruition. A target date is August 1st, but that we're going to open a specialized detox with St. Mary's. And what that's going to be about is that if anybody is in this moment of clarity and they're identified by any of the folks that you see here tonight, that there's going to be a bed for them, available for them to get help. And when that person is identified as eligible and able to participate and willing to participate in the program, and I'll speak to some elements of that as when I transition to Pat, they will have an opportunity to participate in an extended detox, which would be up to 7 days long at the hospital, that they'll be offered a variety of therapeutic tools that'll help reduce anxiety, kind of help reset the brain state, and that they will be offered the ability to have a personal coach, a recovery coach, who will stay with them as a partner for up to a year. And in addition to that, have treatment options available to them post the detox for up to a year. This becomes very important because a lot of times what has happened in the past is even when we detox people, we still gave them the referral and said, hey, I hope you go find treatment. So what's really unique and promising about this is we're actually looking at how are we going to get people help and how are we going to follow them for an extended period of time to see how they do. Now, that doesn't mean we've got this all figured out and it's going to work perfectly, or that we're not going to learn some things along the way. But what it does mean is now we have people that have a partner and a coach, and we can learn about if people start to struggle, how do we help them? And not help them when it's too late, help them when they're in the middle of the struggle. And so this slide references some of the process in the hospital, but long story short, we want to get people in immediately. We want to cut away the red tape. A lot of what happens to people, even when they have that moment of clarity and they get taken somewhere, is then they get kind of bogged down in a lot of red tape. And so what we're looking at doing is eliminating every one of the barriers that gets in the way of people getting the help that they need for this issue, because time is of the essence. I kind of look at it like if somebody was bleeding out with a medical injury. I mean, time is of the essence. If you bleed out, you die. So we're kind of under that same time crunch. We have to get people in. Speak a little bit about the detox. We're really going to focus on regulating the body and the brain. It's not going to be a lot of talk therapy. It's not going to be, we'll save that for treatment later. What we really want to do is get people reset to a place where they can start to make good decisions. The peer coaching that Pat will speak to will really be about a case management, but I also kind of think of it as a partnership. Pat can certainly speak to that. And we want to really make a menu of options for what we're working on at the hospital as we get ready to launch, is giving people a menu of options. Addiction treatment has not always done a very good job about giving people a menu of options. They've said, here's the treatment, and this is what you're going to get. And we're actually trying to develop a menu of options for people that they have access to, because what we don't want them to do in the detox part is sit around. We want them active. We want them getting focused, getting them ready to make some decisions. And most importantly, and we're pretty encouraged about this too, is, a year from now, if we have another one of these, we'll be able to have some data to tell you about what we've learned. Pat's going to speak to some of the folks that we've already worked with the coaching part as we get ready to get the detox underway. But we'll be able to speak to a little bit. We'll know some things about how this has worked for our residents in our area. So we're pretty enthusiastic to be able to kind of do something like that, because to my knowledge there hasn't been a whole lot of research in that area. So we can kind of move on. Now, what I want to really focus on as I kind of transition is, you know, what's been great in the last few years is that one of the things that is the community has really stepped up in terms of resources and partnerships. And I can tell you that, you know, there have always been some resources that have always been here, you know, AA, NA, you know, folks that people can go to for recovery, like meetings. But I was fortunate enough in the past 2 years, Lauren and Dara were introduced earlier as executive board members of our fan chapter to be a part of something called Families Against Narcotics. Families Against Narcotics is an organization and a group that we brought to a chapter here that is in Canton. Meets the first Monday of every month at the Life Church Annex on, is that actually Warren or is it Haggerty? Okay, it's on the corner. So from 6:30 to 8:30, and the meetings are fantastic. We have a great turnout. You know, we really focus on education, resources. We have all different kinds of topics and things that usually bring people in to help them learn more about what to do and the kinds of help and support that people can get and that are out there. The fan chapter, the fan organization as a whole does some wonderful events. Judge Davis, the founder, has done a great job of organizing all kinds of events throughout the state. They do runs, they do you know, media events, they do you know, fundraisers, all kinds of things to help bring awareness to addiction. We in our chapter have had some great public forums. And many of the people here have participated in those forums in one capacity or another, where we've had judges, we've had people speak that are experts about addiction. We've shown movies that are, you know, relevant to learning about the disease. And we also have additional events, monthly forums. Beyond the monthly forums, we have a Friends and Family Support Group that meets the second and fourth Monday of every month, and that's here, I believe, right? Okay. And we have a grief support group that meets at the PC Alano Club on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. And coming up at the end of August, I think on August 31st, we're having an overdose awareness event. We had one last year. It was very well attended. And it was a very powerful event. There was a lot of healing that went on there. So we have done, in our community, there's been a great response to knowing that there needed to be additional help and support. And one of the things that I saw as a value added to FAN and to other groups that are helping be supportive is that, you know, we can help the addict, but we also need to help the families. Because one of the things in my experience in working with treatment is if you don't help support what's going on around a person who's addicted, it's really hard for them to stay sober. And so I think with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up my part and turn it over to Pat.
Okay,
Thanks.
so I'm going to talk pretty quickly because I got a lot to cover, but I do want to put this out because this is what we're really talking about, that recovery. Can I have your cup? Yeah, but it's going to fall.
Oh.
You guys didn't practice this.
I didn't pray. You didn't.
Yeah, we didn't.
Who's going to hold it all meeting?
I think they got the message. So it's for TV too. So recovery does happen. And by our silence, we allow others to define us, which is a strong statement to the stigma that we're here to try to break down. So can you go back one for me? So you see my name, and I got a lot of fancy titles and certifications. So I'm a certified peer recovery mentor, I'm a certified peer recovery coach, I'm a recovery and community support specialist, and I supervise the peer recovery support services at GrowthWorks. But what I really am is an addict and an alcoholic in recovery. And today, I have 1,600 days clean and sober. So I want you to understand like where I'm coming from, all right? So I am what all this is about. And I always will be. And quite frankly, I wouldn't change it. But because of what I became, I have a new purpose in life. So what's powerful as I'm sitting here listening to all of this is that every single person on this panel, except Bruce, thank God I didn't get to the DEA, I have had a consequence from. Public safety, the fire department. I was in front of this judge, as well as the other two at the 35th District Court. I was banned from the athletic events because I embarrassed my children too many times at the high school. My probation officer is here, who now I'm proud to call my friend, that I work with very closely. See, I told you it was going to come. So they didn't give up on me. They didn't give up on me, and neither did the schools, and neither did the community of Canton. I have 2 DUIs, and I assaulted a female police officer in Canton in a 15-hour blackout on opiates, Adderall, and alcohol. I've been to 5 treatment centers, and the last one I was at was a closed-down Catholic church, which is now a Kroger, that they turned the convent into a rehab for men. It was disgusting, and it was run by Eastwood, St. John's, and they put the name of Eastwood on it. That place saved my life. That is where I realized that you're homeless, brother. I lived there for 17 months. When my wife dropped me off there and left there, the guy that I ended up working for, Mark, said, does he have a place to go when he leaves here? And she said verbatim, you people do with him whatever you people do with you people when you people are done doing with whatever you people do with you people, and she left. It's been etched into my head. So 1,600 days ago, I woke up in the jail in Canton, and a detective came to talk to me, and that's when I found out what I'd done. Hitting a woman is despicable, first of all, but a police officer? Incredible. And every time I've been arrested or had contact when I was arrested by my friends that I went to high school with, and one of them is here today, Bob. So I am living proof that recovery does happen. I do want to also talk quickly and recognize 2 people that are here as well today. And that's Beth and Doris from the Canton Community Foundation. They're huge supporters of FAN, and they're huge supporters of also GrowthWorks and the program that I'm working on at GrowthWorks with the Supervised Peer Recovery Support Services. Thank you. So I want to get into this. And I'm going to kind of go all over the board, and I'm going to talk quickly. So the first piece to it is what we're doing right now at St. Mary's Hospital. So since we have started this program at St. Mary's Hospital, we have had over 30 people, this has been 2 months that we have been able to help, not just in the hospital, but in the courts and in the police departments, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. So when a patient comes into the hospital, whether it be by EMS or they come in on their own, from an opioid issue, whether it be from Narcan, they're brought back by Narcan, or any kind of opioid issue, they are approached after they're medically stable by a behavioral health specialist, social worker, and asked if they want to see a peer recovery coach, and they explain what we do. If they do, then we're texted from our answering service, emergency call, St. Mary's, respond. 24/7, 365, we respond to the hospital, and we meet with the client. We meet them where they're at. Depending on what type of insurance they have Medicaid. At this point, we're working on with that St. Mary's, but our coaches go into action by calling the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority, which is our funder at GrowthWorks. We contact them. They do, along with the discharge plan of the hospital, they'll do an intake over the phone and find the services that are appropriate for that patient to go to. So then we'll get that patient hooked up into that particular service. If they do have insurance that St. Mary's takes, they'll be put into the CDU unit where our coaches will go there and visit them every day while they're in the hospital. Now, if a patient doesn't want to see us at the hospital but consents for us to call them, right? We blow their phone up for 10 days straight, 24/7 until they answer. Do you know why? Because they said they want to, typically, they want to see a coach after they leave, but they just want to get out of there. So data says that we'll see a usage then, but there will be another moment of clarity. So from our coaches blowing that phone up for 24/7 for 10 days straight, data has proven to us through the agency that started this in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, that they're going to answer the phone and they're going to ask for help. And then we strike again. So we use this model because they never gave up on me. They never gave up on me. And a lot of other people didn't give up on me. And quite frankly, we don't have the luxury to give up on people because we never know when that moment of clarity is going to come. So once we get them through let's say a detox or a rehab, then we get them involved in clinical services, which GrowthWorks provides. An IOPD, which is an intensive outpatient with domicile, which means living, an outpatient service or relapse prevention. So potentially, we are able to give a person that we met in the hospital, in the court, or in the police department, an entire year of recovery coaching and clinical services for free if they live in Wayne County. If they don't, we'll still work with them. Everybody gets help. Our coaches are extensively trained. One of them is here today that I'm blessed to have. We're blessed to have. Allison. All of our coaches are trained in the beginning through the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery, but now the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has taken that over. They have extensive hours in training in that in different domains. GrowthWorks also requires that we also are certified by McBAT, the Michigan Association of Addiction Professionals. If you're going to be a therapist or counselor in the state, you have to be certified by them. And our coaches have development plans right now for certified peer recovery mentors, which is several hundred hours of training. And GrowthWorks also, as well as the Detroit Mental Health Authority, because they fund us, require us to continually to train annually. So all of our coaches are trained. But here's the unique piece of it. Every single coach that we have, it's mandated that they be in recovery for no less than 2 years. They have to be in recovery. You know why? Because they've walked in the shoes of the people that they're helping. And sometimes those shoes are pretty crappy. But we've walked in it, we've tasted it, and we felt it. We all have different areas in what we've had addiction. We're diverse. I won't go into it, but we're very diverse in the addictions that we've been through. So I want to mention, too, the police department piece. So we're going to be responding to the police department, which we already are in Canton and Northville, so you know, and part of that 30 is powerful. We actually said, the officers will call, see, I got somebody in lockup that wants to see you. We go right into lockup, and we talk to them. So 2 of the people that we've dealt with right now, that we've gotten out of lockup, have completed rehab and then are on our services. And they have quite a bit of clean time. Same with Northville. Now, this is pretty powerful. I get a call from Mr. Hand and says, Judge Plakis has ordered from the bench. From the bench, Judge Plakis has ordered me to call GrowthWorks and have a coach sent out here because he's got a guy in there that's high in here. A judge calling from the bench to ask for a peer coach to come. That's unheard of. Well, not anymore. It's heard of. Because, see, this is on TV, so I got to be careful. So they care. They understand that we're not going to lock up, arrest ourselves out of this problem. He wants people to get help. So do the other 2. I was in Judge Giroux's sobriety court for 2 years. Saved my life. The consequence saved my life. Now, Judge just doesn't say, call Pat at GrowthWorks, get somebody over here and help this guy. He's all good. Take care, buddy. No, he's got a consequence, or she still has a consequence to deal with. Judge will deal with that later. Get the person help. Get him into rehab, get him into detox, get him help. That person gets out Friday, I believe. Gets out Friday. He'll still answer to his charges, and as he should, because public safety means public safety. And the court has a job to do too. And if they didn't do it, the community to be in an uproar. But see, judges approaching it a different way, as they do at 35th, and at 16th, and at 34th. They have a treatment court. Judge didn't speak to it, but he's working on a drug court on top of the sobriety court. Amazing. They care. And because they care, other people are able to live a life in recovery because it happens. It's just not possible. Recovery happens. So we can't forget that. I was a very successful man when I was in business. Very successful. And I ended up living homeless in a convent for 17 months. But because the community, the courts, the police departments, and a ton of other people cared, I'm here, and so is she. And so are 4 other coaches that we have, and we're continuing to hire. This stuff works. And folks, this is reality. When we get into the empathy training with the ER docs, trauma doctors, behavioral health staff, and all of the front line there, it's not too hard because they already have it. When Josh spoke to, when the director spoke to the empathy of the police department, let me tell you about the empathy of the police department. Every single time, hey, you got it. You got to get some help. Yeah, okay. I don't have a problem. You got to get some help. I don't have a problem. Well, I guess I did because I hit a female police officer. So this is important. So he says to me 3.5 years ago, hey, I don't know if it's time yet or not, but you want to go do the roll call training with me at the police department? I go, oh, God. Yeah, okay. So I did. I walk through the front door now, which is exciting. So the last night, we're doing it at 7 o'clock at night. There she is. Oh, God. The officer that I hit. So I do my thing with Brian, and I walk around and hand my cards out. She stands up and hugs me and told me she was proud of me. That's what police department these guys made. That's powerful. And it's because they cared, and everybody in here that cared. And the fans, fan world, incredible. There to support the families. This works, and it will continue to work. We need to understand that we don't know who we're living next to, or when we look to the car next to us, who's in it. And if we continue to judge people, we got a problem. We need to knock down the walls of stigma, because when you get deep into this, it's hard to get out. It's hard. And that's what we're all here about, is to help people get out of it. I'll close with the, do I have another slide? Okay. So, the immediate social connection that we meet with the patient at the hospital is this. When you bring back somebody from an overdose in opiates by Narcan, that person's pissed off. Their drugs are gone, their money's gone, and they don't feel good. And then they feel like my life isn't worth living. Well, what we bring to that table is recovery capital. The person that Narcan them back, the person who drove that rig to the hospital, the emergency staff at the hospital, and then the coaches that are there, that's their recovery capital. Those people care. We care. And they need to understand that there is recovery. We have a long-term partner coach is what we call it, because we've walked in their shoes and we're with them the whole way. We help them to change their lifestyle to a manageable lifestyle. Strategic support, empathy completely, familiarity obviously, honesty, truth, confidence, credibility, and we're data collectors. So we're there to support in every single aspect. Housing, food, whatever it needs to be, medical attention, whatever it is. By helping the folks that we're dealing with get into recovery, get into the medical situations, address the medical situations that they weren't addressing before, something simple as dentistry. We're helping to drive down insurance costs because they're not continually going back to a doctor. This isn't easy. And there's going to be bad days, but we understand that. And we've had our bad days too. So I want to close with this. And I want to kind of give props to the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority too. They're amazing. They have a very tough job. People don't realize that. Those folks at the other end of the phone, when you call, they never have anybody go, hey, I got 1,600 days clean and sober today, thanks to you. They're upset, they need help, and they're miserable. So I have to give the credit out to them as well. But here's something extremely powerful. In July, for 4 days straight in the morning during the trainings that the police department is doing. I'll be training every single Canton police officer, because I'm a trainer for the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority, in the lock zone, Narcan. Every single unit that is in the fleet will have this in their vehicle, in the police cars, every single unit. And it's not costing Canton Township a penny. That's happy. And then we're moving as well to the courts, which I talked to Jim. We're also gonna train the courts. And they'll have the kits on hand too. When the kits are used, there's 2 doses in this kit. When they're used, simple form's filled out and it's replaced, free. So every single unit will have them. The shelf life on these are over a year. Once they expire, we switch them out, put them back in the cars. Because most of the time, fire rescue's there. But when they roll up on somebody that's knotted out in a car, an officer might have to take action. I think that's it. So thank you for your patience, and Barb, thanks for the PowerPoints. I never ever follow them. Sorry.
Thank you, Pat. I had the luxury of meeting Pat a little over 3 years ago, and in the past 3 years, he's so passionate about what he does, and he's always been there for our agency anytime we call, and I'm proud to call him my friend tonight. So thank you, Pat. I'll turn it over to Deputy Director Baugh, who's going to talk about some of the efforts the Canton Police Department is taking in this cause.
I'm very fortunate to get to follow up Pat Stropes, Mr. Powerful Speaker in the room there, so thank you again, Pat. We're going to break it down to individual user arrest. You know, the traditional law enforcement, we're first trained to enforce the law, so what we're doing is trying to pivot towards what's supplying this effort, these addicts. And while we arrest them, we're trying to find people like Pat, and we found him. We bring them in, provide that support while we talk to these people to see if they want to cooperate, help us find who is supporting their habit. When we talk about these box stores that are throughout the township, they support the habit, unbeknownst to them, not their critical mission, but people steal from these stores and find secondary markets to support their habit because they have to use drugs to stay alive. So we understand that. So we pivot our mindset. The old days, we arrest that person and they go to jail, and there's really no follow-up to who's really feeding that part of this process. So we're excited as an agency to be able to partner with our friends who are in the room. So with that, we prosecute the real big dealers too. We have, as you see, Bruce McCauley's in the room, and in the last year with some of the overdose deaths, we are able to have 4 indictments right now with what we allege to be 10 to 12 people that have been killed by these individuals through the drugs that they've sold to some of our Canton residents. And also, we have some challenges, the potency, the risk that goes into investigating these types of crime with the opiates, the heroin, the fentanyl that's laced inside the heroin is 30 to 50 times more potent. So our people can't test it like in our traditional methods where we put it in a tube. We can't do that anymore. We have to send it off to the lab. That slows things down. It slows the prosecution effort down. If we're with our, we'll call them clients or arrestees, we can still support them in getting help if they're willing. We can get them help. We have this mechanism. We have a pathway to get, to help the whole common good. So it's exciting as a police department to get to this point. If you want to, we have a second slide. It helps explain at a real basic level what ORC is. We're going to show a video in a second. But in 2013, we were fortunate enough to start an operation, multiple operations that actually it's up to about 10 right now, but 7 are in the court system, and they've been very successful. We're talking 6-figure cases where we're taking down fences, pawn shops, where they're actually setting orders for addicts to go out and steal from your Walmarts, your Targets, Meijer, Kohl's. And our partnership with our retailers, we've been able to, no cost to Canton, use their efforts, they supplied us with the product, and we go in these stores and we sell it, and in turn, we do search warrants later and prosecute these people for racketeering. This video here gives you a little background on how this works. It just gives you an idea of what ORC is now. This law came to be around 2012, and go ahead and play it, Barb.
Strange black market sale. Police in Southeast Michigan say there's increasing demand for cosmetics, especially nail polish. 7 Action News reporter Shelley Childers explains how getting your nails done could be fueling Michigan's heroin epidemic.
Most women don't think about where the nail polish in their local salon comes from. Police in Metro Detroit tell us it could be stolen, purchased by the salon from drug addicts.
For us in Lake Orion, that was the first time we saw it.
Lake Orion Police Chief Jerry Narsh says in his 35 years on the job, he's seen a lot of shoplifting, but it was a particular theft at this CVS that raised red flags. Nearly 200 bottles of nail polish stolen, totaling $1,600.
It's a popular product. Almost everyone's having their nails done, and there's a lot of salons.
In this surveillance video, you can see a man and woman walking into the store together. They head directly to the cosmetics aisle, their attention focused on the high-end, high-priced nail polish.
They had obviously been in the store before. They knew where the display was. They knew the product was there. They walked directly to the product, stole the product, turned around and left.
In fact, the store caught them on camera twice. Each time the woman opened a large empty purse and shoved dozens of tiny, colorful bottles inside.
What they're going to do is steal a $10 bottle, sell that for $2, take that $2, and then fund their drug habit.
He says those bottles likely ended up in suburban Detroit spas and salons.
So usually if there's a theft, there's a customer. And in this case, they knew that, and they were stealing the nail polish, taking it to the small salons and selling it at a dime on a dollar.
Customers inside those stores have no idea their manicures and pedicures came from an illegal deal supporting illegal drugs. The man in this video was caught by police. Derek Hill is currently in jail for 2 separate felony cases. We caught up with him in court where he confessed to the judge heroin was behind his crime.
You have a serious history of substance abuse, and you have been using heroin. You said heroin is driving your criminal behavior.
It's a very, very big problem that we're having, and to the level that we are saying it's becoming almost catastrophic.
Detroit Rescue Mission Ministries is tracking the heroin trend. Dr. Chad Audie says the drug is hitting young adults the most. They've seen more and more 18 to 27-year-olds reaching for help.
As we speak right now, we're rehabbing a new facility because we need more beds.
Dr. Audie says thefts of all kinds across Michigan will continue to rise and new black markets will emerge every day. Police do not know which salons or how many are involved in the growing black market for nail polish.
Especially during the economy that Michigan went through, many times even business owners are going to look to other ways of funding their business and making sure they stay in business. It's unfortunate, it's illegal, but it happens.
The chief recommends having a frank conversation with your salon. Ask them where they purchased the polish. Use your instincts to determine if the salon is worth your money. During the court case we watched, Derek Hill was sentenced to 90 days in jail, followed by enrollment in a treatment program. He is still going through the court process for that nail polish theft. The woman seen in that video with him was found on the run in New York. Lake Orion police are working to get her back to Michigan to face justice and receive help. Shelley Childers, 7 Action News.
What you see, that gives you a nice basic overview of how organized retail crime works. Our police agency would work with that individual, try to find the source of the offense, who's fencing the product, selling that product, and initiate an investigation from there. Meanwhile, work with someone from GrowthWorks to provide some support and use the court system to help mandate that court or that recovery to a large degree. I won't steal a lot of thunder from Bruce from DEA, but eventually some of these cases make it to a very, very large-scale drug operations, and we've been successful in that regard, and he'll talk to that. But we work with Homeland Security, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the FBI currently on active investigations, all resulting from source cities and countries far, far away from Canton, Michigan that cause this problem. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Now I'd like to introduce Bruce McCauley, Assistant Special Agent in Charge of the Detroit DEA. the DA has been just an amazing partner to the Canton Police Department in the last several years, and I just want to thank Bruce and his team for continued efforts. They've always been there on the front lines to assist us with cases that originated in Canton, and so thanks for that.
We appreciate the partnership that we've developed with the City of Canton and Canton Police Department. What many people don't know about DEA is that DEA several years ago recognized the challenges in the opioid epidemic, so we developed what we call the 360 strategy. And in this strategy, there's three major elements. The first element that I'll speak to is the community outreach and partnerships that we have developed to try to firstly prevent the addictions that have been developing out there. And in developing this program and try to stop the addictions from happening to begin with, we've partnered up with schools to develop programs where our youth can be exposed to the threats that are out there, not only the drugs themselves, but the people who will prey upon them to get them addicted to these drugs to begin with. And it'll be a lifelong addiction, as anyone who's familiar with this will tell you. So firstly, we developed a partnership with Discovery Education, and they set up a website called operationprevention.com, where schools can include this program inside their curriculum, their social studies curriculum, where it is a live program where students can participate real time with people who are being interviewed as to various aspects of the illegal drug trade in one aspect or another. It could be professional chemists who explain how the drugs affect their body negatively, the addiction itself, and how potent these addictions are, but also the negative impacts that it has on them. We also get involved in various community projects such as the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and other type of community or anti-drug coalitions. But also a part of this is to work with the doctors that are out there and make sure that they're aware of really not only the impact that these addictions have, but what they can do differently to prevent the addictions from beginning. We've partnered up with local legislators to discuss how laws can be changed so that rather than prescribing drugs, these opioids, for, say, with prescriptions of perhaps 30 days in length, to shorten that down to maybe 7 days at length so that they don't get too much, but if they ask for more, they need to come in and see the doctor to explain why they feel they need more of this very highly addictive drug to begin with. That also helps us in other aspects as well. We have another section within DEA that not a lot of people are familiar with, and we call that our diversion control section within DEA. And that section in DEA deals along the lines of pharmaceutical controls. So they deal with the regulatory aspects of manufacturers, pharmacies, practitioners, that element of the legal drug trade, and the administrative aspects of making sure that they're following the rules, that they're complying with what regulations say they should be doing. An element within diversion control is the tactical diversion squads. And those squads are composed of criminal investigators as well as regulators that combine, they target bad actors who might be physician assistants or doctors who are illegally prescribing drugs. They'll sell their prescriptions or what have you, and we send people in undercover when we get intelligence that these doctors are doing the wrong thing, and we'll criminally prosecute these individuals. Diversion control is also involved in investigating pharmacy robberies. That's a growing trend where now even street gangs are conducting nighttime burglaries or robberies of pharmacies to steal these oxycodone, hydrocodone pills, and then they sell them in the black market. So we actively go after those organizations. Part of diversion control is also a program that we do twice a year called the Drug Take Back. And hopefully you've heard of this program. It's usually done around October and April of the year. Most recently, April 28th, we had one, and nationally we recovered about 1 million pounds of pharmaceutical drugs that people had in their medicine cabinets or what have you that they wanted to surrender and have properly disposed. Of course, most people are familiar with the law enforcement element of DEA. We have various heroin initiatives that partner us with agencies or departments like Canton PD, where we work together and focus on specific missions such as the heroin opioid epidemic. But together we coordinate our efforts in going after the sources of supply, and many of these are from overseas or out of country. And very recently, we had a seizure of about 34 kilos of fentanyl here in the Detroit area. And as you may have heard, this is a highly lethal drug, in just having a few milligrams touch your skin can cause a fatal overdose. So 34 kilos is enough to kill several thousand people. And they mix this in with the heroin and sometimes even make fake pills that look very much like prescription medication, and they sell them on the street with people not realizing that they're not real pills, and people overdose that way as well. So in working together with our counterparts, we have also formed multi-agency task forces, or in this case, more recently, we've put together a strike force with many of our partners here in the Detroit area. Now, strike forces are very unique. There's only 14 in the nation, and usually they're established in major cities like Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, etc. Major source cities where the drugs are having a very heavy toll on the community. And together, these strike forces communicate to each other to put together conspiracy investigations that impact the whole nation, and even internationally. A lot of our sources of supply here in Detroit, more recently, we're having connections directly into Mexico to sources of supply that are coming here. Historically, they were hubbing out of cities like St. Louis and Chicago, but that's not true anymore. We're talking directly to sources of supply in Mexico to bring up fentanyl, cocaine, sometimes cocaine laced with fentanyl. Even marijuana now we're finding in some cases being laced with fentanyl to make it more addictive. So we've partnered up with our local departments in the area, and Canton PD has been one of our most valued partners in doing our work, not only in establishing the strike force, but also in some of the cases that they've had here with the overdoses. As soon as we get word of those overdoses occurring even at night, we'll go directly to the scene and start treating the scene as a homicide investigation and collecting whatever intelligence we can. And in some cases, we've made arrests within 48 hours on the sources of supply for those overdoses. The federal government has many resources that some smaller departments do not have, and so we're able to work very quickly. In the cases of these overdoses, when they're laced with fentanyl, we'll have a series of overdoses associated with it, so it's very important that we get to these sources of supply very quickly and get those drugs off the street, as well as the people who are responsible for the overdoses. So among the agencies that participate in these strike forces, and the one that we're establishing here in Detroit includes the FBI, ATF, of course ourselves, HSI, U.S. Marshals, U.S. Postal Service as well, because many of the fentanyl packages are coming via mail directly from China. So we're working very closely with them to identify those packages and trace those back to the sources of supply. We've also partnered with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We will have a number of U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys assigned to the strike force here, and we partnered with the State Attorney General's Office and also the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office to assist us on those cases. So altogether, the DEA really appreciates the community support that's happened in the area, and more specifically the Canton PD for being a very valued partner in our efforts here.
Thank you, Bruce. Our next speaker is the Honorable Judge Plikus. 35th District Court has seen some great success in the sobriety court. I know that Judge Plikus is working on some other programs that I think are really going to be beneficial to our community. So, Judge, take it away.
Director. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure how many people of you are aware, but your court here serving your community here in Canton already does have a sobriety court in place. Judge Giroux started that court. He continues to be in charge of it. The first participant admitted into that program was admitted on February the 9th of 2004. When I was practicing law, I was fortunate enough not only to be a prosecutor, but I also practiced criminal defense at the same time. It allowed me to see addiction and drugs and alcohol and things from every angle possible. And my client was that very first participant in the program. And he graduated successfully, and I run into him every now and then, and it's a joy to discuss with him the new life that he now leads. We've had 425 participants since the program inception, 276 successful graduates. Only 8 of the participants have been discharged because of a subsequent offense. It's been recognized by the State Court Administrative Office as one of the most successful alcohol sobriety courts in the state of Michigan. So the State Court Administrative Office oversees all of the courts in the state of Michigan. They're essentially our boss along with the Supreme Court justices. But they track all the files, they keep statistics, they come and they visit the courts. We're actually going to have our yearly review, I believe, coming up in another 2 weeks here. They will go over everything with us. They compare the statistics, and they have told us it is one of the most successful courts in the state. And it is completely self-funded. So in my time on the bench, seeing the impact that the sobriety court has had, I've come to the conclusion that now being 9.5 years on the bench, we're missing something, and that is we're missing a drug court. So right now I'm just going to kind of walk you quickly through the process of what it's like to be at the court system. Charges, to begin with, charges are brought by the people. That would be the community. The prosecutor prosecutes the case on behalf of the people. They are charged either with misdemeanors or felonies. So misdemeanors are handled by your local district court. And we serve the 5 communities, which I addressed earlier, like Livonia only, the 16th District Court, which Pat had touched upon earlier, they only serve Livonia. 34th and Romulus, they serve multiple communities there. So they handle all the misdemeanors. The felonies are handled at the circuit court level. And circuit courts, they represent the counties. So they serve an entire county. We have our Wayne County Circuit Court, and they are located in downtown Detroit, which you commonly see on TV. So the district court is what we commonly call the people's court, because you're dealing with people in just everyday life type stuff. And I enjoy sitting at the district court level because I do believe it's the court, it's the level of court where you can really have an incredible impact on someone's life. And the difference between misdemeanors and felonies is anything over 2 years. Well, even a misdemeanor can be a 2-year misdemeanor, and that would still be considered almost a felony. It would go downtown to the circuit court, in case you're wondering, because if an offense is committed in your local community, that's where it's going to start. It's going to start at that local court. So any offense committed is going to start here at the 35th So we'll take a drug case, for example. If it's a felony case, it starts there. Person is entitled to a preliminary exam where there's a certain burden of proof. It's a probable cause that the prosecutor has to establish in that case within 21 days after the person is arraigned. If there's probable cause, the person is sent to the county court, and the process almost starts all over again at that point. So they would end up at the circuit court serving that county, and if it's a misdemeanor, it's gonna stay local with your court here. And part of the process after the person is brought in for the court, the first step is gonna be your arraignment. Now, the arraignment can be very crucial because at the arraignment, the person's read the charges, they're told what the penalties are, what the potential fines could be, and they're going to be given a court date to come back, assuming they plead not guilty. And most people will plead not guilty. In a felony case, you're automatically, the judge just tells you, I'm entering a not guilty plea for you. Technically, you could plead to a misdemeanor at the arraignment level, but I would say almost every single judge will talk you out of that and tell you, why don't you go talk to a prosecutor and see if you can work something out before you do so, and or speak with an attorney. So what's going to happen is, at that arraignment level, let's assume we have someone who's pled not guilty. The next step is that judge, before letting that person go or take another step, needs to determine, what are we going to do with this person? There's personal bonds that get set. That means you don't post anything. We trust you're coming back. We'll see you in 2 weeks. There's, we call an unsecured personal bond, where you tell them it's $500 unsecured personal bond, which means you still don't have to post anything, but it's kind of like this contract there not a legal contract, but I tell them, if you don't show up now, I want you to understand, I'm going to take that number, I'm going to multiply it by 10, whatever it may be, and it's possibly going to be cash or surety. So just make sure you show up here. And then there are cash surety bonds, which pretty much self-explanatory. You have to post the cash on it, or a surety steps up and posts for you. And then conditions are set. So in a case where you have someone with an addiction, and this would apply whether it's an alcohol case, I'm arraigning someone on it's a third offense felony on a drunk driving, or an addiction to drugs. Part of the conditions commonly set are no alcohol, no drugs. Sometimes you need to go get an evaluation and start following what that person may say, things of that nature. It is if the family is aware this person is going to be arraigned. Most judges, I would say, will welcome input from the family. We don't know what, other than criminal history we may get to see, we don't know what's really going on in this person's life. If a family member is there, and I have this defendant in front of me, and I will say, hey, listen, my court officer will let me know, I got a dad here, and he's really concerned about his son. I will let him know, your father's here, and I need your father's input when it comes to setting whether it's going to be a bond, bail, and or conditions on you. So do not, in my opinion, just my opinion, and there's 400 and some judges in the state, and I'm sure we all have different opinions, but don't be bashful. In my court, don't be bashful about showing up and giving me your input on if you think this person needs some help. All right? Very, very crucial, especially at the beginning stage. And one of those examples would be like what we just did with this other individual, where we will get someone into, I could set bail on someone, and they could be held, and I could say, hey, if you're going to get yourself into a treatment facility or something, I'll amend it to a personal bond. Just go and start your path to being healthy. So after bail is set, there's pretrial negotiations. This person and or they with their attorney go and they discuss the case with the prosecutor and will typically work out a plea. If they can't work out a plea, there's going to be a trial. You have an alternative. There's a bench trial, which is a trial in front of a judge, or a jury trial, which is in front of a jury. And in our court, it would be 6 individuals who make that decision. And during the negotiation process, if you have multiple priors, typically the prosecutor is probably going to only offer you a plea that has a condition, with a conviction with it. If you're a first-time drug offender, you may be offered a 7411 plea, which is a certain statute which addresses drug offenders, which allows you to control your own destiny. You're put on probation, and if you follow through with certain things, it's never entered as a conviction. There's delayed sentence pleas that are commonly given on drug offenses. That one gets reported to your public criminal history while you're on probation, but it'll be removed from that history if you do everything you're told to do, stay out of trouble, don't have any contacts with any law enforcement agencies. That one, your file technically always remains open to public viewing. There's HIDA pleas for younger people who are a certain age. It is, again, you control your own destiny. It is not a conviction. So these are examples of the fact that being in the legal system is not the end. It can be a tool to help you. I guarantee you of this. That's why the legislature has passed these laws, to help people. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know that these things are available to you, even if you plead to it or take a plea to an offense or end up in the system. And so when it gets time if someone takes the plea, they get interviewed by a probation officer. They oftentimes take a certain test that kind of reads whether or not, what kind of person you are, if you may have addictions, things of that nature. But more importantly, the probation officers sit down with these people, they dig, they get important information, and based upon that information, they will put together a recommendation for the judge. And then it comes time for sentencing, they get to see that recommendation, they get to see, it's not kept secret from them, they get to see what the probation officer thinks, what their opinion is, and it's time for sentencing. And sentencing's going to include fines and costs always. It could be probation up to 24 months. There could be drug and alcohol testing, an evaluation by a specific treater, things of that nature. There's always jail as an option, obviously. Work detail. I don't know how many times you guys have been out and you see either on a Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday in this community, you see the people on the side of the road, they're following the white van and they got the orange top on. Well, those are work detailers. And there's the other option, and that is community service. So community service is you go donate your time to a nonprofit organization. And all depending on the offense and how many priors you may have and what's going on, and if you're violating, that often is will determine which category you fall into. And, okay, I'm going to get into peer coaching and things of that nature later. But then there's also so that would be team approach. There's input from the family at sentencing. I never hesitate to get input from a family member. All right, now the defendant has a right, especially if they're an adult. Now a juvenile, the parent can tell me whatever they want to tell me, but the defendant has a right to say, I don't want any input from this person. I'll use my discretion, but almost every single time they will let the parent or the family member, the wife, the husband, whoever it is, give some input in the sentencing. And I'll tell you again, you're in my court, don't be bashful about showing up and expressing your opinion to me. Because like I was saying earlier, this is not an exact science. It's very difficult, it's very challenging, everyone is different, and sometimes people are in front of you, and my probation officers are trained and they're dang good at what they do, but a lot of the people with addictions, if you know them, they're incredibly good at manipulating situations and talking their way through just about anything. They're masters at it, and that's just part of the addiction. They try to filter all that out, so it helps to have a family member, friend, whoever may be there, to let me know. This is something else that's going on, and I just heard what you had to say, and I think maybe we need to add this. You have no idea, he's got a horrible anger problem, a horrible anger issue. I've had incidents repeatedly of physical assaults, things of that nature. Share with. I welcome it, okay? So that's very crucial. And as I said, so the next step for us at the court is, this is where we already have all this in play. I want to have this drug court. And so for people who don't understand, the purpose of a drug court, the primary purpose of a drug court program is to use a court's authority to reduce crime and improve lives by changing an individual's substance abuse behavior through the use of education, frequent and respectful interaction, support, and coordinated efforts as an alternate to incarceration. So we've already, as a court, submitted the required documentation to the National Drug Court Institute for the purpose of starting our program. We are on their wait list to receive training. We are currently pursuing grants through them. There are also grants available through the State Court Administrative Office that we're pursuing and we're giving consideration to. It's just something that we have to consider is whether or not we should be merging sobriety court with the drug court. There are things that come with doing that, however. They both have different best practices and standards and things of that nature, but it's just something that right now is on our list. And just so you understand, I pulled this off of their website, the National Drug Court Institute, and they say they were formed in 1997 in response to a great need for standardized, evidence-based training and technical assistance as a result of the rapid expansion of problem-solving courts across the United States. As a division of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, they have continually evolved to meet the ever-changing needs of treatment court professionals and have emerged as the definitive authority on the latest research, best practices, and cutting-edge innovations to treat offenders facing substance abuse and mental health disorders. The U.S. Department of Justice has recently received $95 million from Congress to support drug courts, alcohol courts, veterans courts, and other courts of that nature. So this is nationwide. People are aware of the needs. People are working on this across the country. And just so you understand the depth of this and that it's not just something that we all say, oh, we're going to start a drug court and let's put together a plan. It's far more detailed than that. So the National Drug Court Institute is a national training and technical assistance provider for the Bureau of Justice Assistance with the Office of Justice Programs at the United States Department of Justice. Through the cooperative, the National Drug Court Institute provides comprehensive implementation training to adult drug courts, tribal healing, to wellness courts, and veterans team courts. These free training programs are designed to educate teams about the basic components of the courts, teach the skills necessary for successfully making the shift from standard case processing to treatment court case processing, building a program that integrates court and treatment functions and adheres to the best practice standards. And for an example, just so you understand, Adult Drug Court Planning Initiative is a facilitated 6-month planning process for new and planned adult drug courts. Each jurisdiction is required to complete pre-training worksheets, participate in pre-training webinars, attend 3-day training programs, maintain routine correspondence with program staff, submit to an adult drug court implementation plan, draft policy and procedure manuals. There's a 3-day on-site training program that's designed to educate participants with the building blocks of adult drug courts and develop a solid drug court implementation plan. And to participate, each community must identify 8 individuals representing the following disciplines to form their planning team. You need a drug court coordinator, a judge, a prosecutor, defense attorney, treatment provider, community supervision representative, law enforcement personnel, an evaluator or a researcher. So it is this team approach to helping people with addictions. And to me, the most important and crucial part of this is what a guy like Pat's going to do. He will be the reason that this thing is successful. Because of people like him who have the experience, who have walked this, they know. And I will be leaning on him, and I will be blowing up his phone. Maybe someday he'll call me his friend and call me Jim instead of Judge, like he likes to call the director Josh. But
calling either one of you Judge or Jim or Josh.
So, yeah, and so that's what it comes down to, is having these peers help these people. But they're going to educate us on this stuff too, and that's the important thing. Because right now, I need more from him, and that's why I go to these Families Against Narcotics meetings. I don't have to go to those, but this is the kind of stuff I like to say feeds my judicial soul, is helping people who have challenges in life. And when I go to FAN, that's what it does. It's that, like Brian said, it's the first Friday or first Monday of every month, and I get to listen to these people, and I see the impact not only on them but on their families. And I always repeat this. I always used to tell people when they came in front of me, I'm trying to help you here, but if you don't want the help, it's not going to happen. And one of these meetings, they kept saying you have to be willing to do it. You have to be willing to do it. It's not necessarily wanting to do it. And it's changed my perspective on the whole thing. And now that's the word I use, is willing. I tell them, if you're willing, you may not want to do it, but let's take some steps and expose you to this. And if you're willing to do it, you might find something to latch onto, and it could change your life, and I use that term spiderweb too, could change multiple lives around you after that. So that is the objective, to have a drug court up and running. The wheels are spinning, and we're going to keep them moving until it's finalized. We'll have a big celebration when we do. Leave your name, we'll invite all of you. And I appreciate the time. If anyone ever has questions for me, 35th District Court, that's where you find me. I have an open door policy. I'll talk to anyone about anything. All right, so thank you very much again for the invitation.
Thank you, Judge Blakis, and I'm looking forward to working with the court on some of these programs. So, real quick, we've covered a lot of things in the last almost 2 hours now. We've come a long way in 2 years to attempt to address this problem, but we're not out of the woods yet. We've got a long way to go. We know, as you heard, we're not going to arrest our way or Narcan our way out of this problem. It's a problem that's going to have to continue to take effort, continue to take partnerships with a focus on accountability, treatment, and ongoing education if we're going to try to permanently resolve this issue. A couple of the things that we're going to continue to do in the future, we're going to continue to empower our fire and police personnel to identify individuals so that we can get them in that early treatment, so that we can get them the help that they need sooner rather than later. We're going to monitor the data. We're going to continue to collect data. We're going to continue to monitor that. Why? Because that's going to drive some of our decisions. It's going to drive us to help educate our officers and our firefighters, and also help us push people into these treatment programs. As Pat mentioned, we're taking a step. We're going to put Narcan in our police cars. Our police officers are going to be trained in that event where they may arrive first before the fire department. They would be able to administer that treatment early and potentially save a life, and I think that's important. And then the offensive approach, again, we're going to target ORC opportunities. We're going to continue that effort. I believe it's working, and I believe in what we're doing, and we're going to continue that. And we're also going to continue our partnerships with the DA and others to target those violent drug traffickers and get them off our streets who are supplying our families and our friends and our community with the narcotics that they're using. So with that, I try to keep it 2 hours. We're right at that 2 hour mark, but we will open that up to some questions that the group may have. I do ask that you go to the podium where the microphone is if you have any questions, and I'll direct it to appropriate panel member. So any questions?
Thanks. This is a great program, and I'm really looking forward to it working. I've been to 4 funerals of young people who have died of overdose. The last one I went to was my niece, who died of heroin with fentanyl in it. And what happened to her in Wayne County, I just want to see a little bit difference. So a year before she died, she had been arrested for the 3rd time for paraphernalia with drugs, and she was sent to Wayne County Jail. She spent 6 months there, and then another 6 months in rehab. They put her in an in-house rehab, so she was living inside a residency. After she got out, within 6 weeks, she had overdosed. What we think fell through the cracks is my sister had gotten a call about 4 weeks after she died and said she hadn't showed up for one of her drops, her urine drops. And what really threw us off is what took so long. You didn't notice for 6 to 8 weeks that she hadn't shown up. So I watched the steps to your program, and then you had talked about, afterwards you have peer counseling and that, but Wayne County didn't have the resources. She fell through the cracks. And we were told by an agency that if she would have been in Oakland County, they would have probably caught it sooner. But what is the difference now? I mean, does Wayne County have the resources? I mean, I know we'll have local people doing it, but if it's sent out on a county-wide basis, are those resources still strained like they were? Does anyone know?
I'll probably direct that to Judge Plakis.
So in that particular case, and again, I don't know all of the background to it. I'm sorry for your loss. So with the particular, to address the drop situation, you know, we're bound by HIPAA. So if there was not a release, let's say, signed for that particular person to get told that they didn't show up for the drop, right? But then that's neither here nor there. Where was the support? So she was in jail and then went to an in-jail rehab?
It was an inpatient. He sent her, he said she had to live at a facility for 6 months.
Okay, well, this is where, let's just use the Detroit-Wayne Mental Health Authority, for instance, right? So the Detroit-Wayne Mental Health Authority now has peer coaches. And we should say the providers have peer coaches. Like, for instance, the Detroit Recovery Project, who serves that area there with peer coaching. So the important piece to that is also the clinical end. So after the rehab, the continuation of services needs to continue as far as the clinical piece, counseling with trained, certified counselors, and then which we offer, and that we also have a peer coach attached to that. So we don't want to, the most vulnerable time is when you get out of a rehab, because you have this pink cloud like, this is great, I got it. Because you've got that small amount of recovery and clean time that you're so proud of because maybe you've never had that. So then you find yourself going, I got this, I can do this on my own. Well, with you got a coach to it and you've got a clinical piece to it from the get, that's where the piece I think possibly, I can't speak to it, I don't know the whole situation, but I say that that's how, if I was case managing that, that's how I would have done it differently. So, yes, yes.
My name is Jim Hanna. I work with Judge Blake as his Canton, right? Probation officer for 45th District Court. The young man that Judge Blake spoke about earlier, Pat spoke about earlier, that entered into treatment into 45, almost 60 days ago, and gets out on Friday. Pat and I have been coordinating treatment to it per se, and the peer coach. And I was contacted in the therapy, the treatment program that he's in, knowing that he gets out today, notified Pat, hey, this guy's getting out today, getting out on Friday. He's going to 36th on Monday, he's going to be 35th before going to 36th on Wednesday. Pat goes, fine, I'm going to let Sean, his peer coach, know I'm going to blow up this one on Friday. This Friday, when he gets out, Sean, his peer coach, will have contacted him right Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll talk to him on Monday after he gets out of his 36th district court hearing. Talk to him Friday and Tuesday. He'll be in before the Plickis at 9 o'clock on Wednesday.
That would be.
That's kind of what our plan is.
Yeah.
35th district court and peer support.
Then you would look at the lab results then too, or how does?
Lab results, the agencies we use, if someone doesn't show up, we know pretty much that following morning they didn't show up. So if someone's in a drug court or narcotic court, if they don't show up, typically I'll be calling them and saying, hey, what's going on? Why didn't you show up? Those individuals we see in PO every single week, probably talking to their peer support every day or every other day. The sponsor, we do 12-step meetings, whether it's Smart Recovery or AANA or PAMI, whatever may need to happen. That's the kind of program, the special support programs. That's how they work.
If I could add, yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, if I could add one thing too, you know, systemically, you know, we've approached addiction as kind of like a broken leg or an acute issue. Like you take somebody in, you give them some help and you send them on your way. And addiction is a disease, it's a lifelong illness. And so, you know, systemically, when this opioid epidemic kind of like tsunamied, the system was ill-prepared on any level to deal with it because you had the body count literally piling up. You had a system that was still operating under this model that wasn't efficient. It wasn't really set to really help people the way they needed to be helped. And so in a lot of ways, we're playing catch up. I have been to so many funerals of so many people that I care about. I'm actually a person in recovery and a participant in 12-step meetings. And I have never experienced so many people dying in recovery as I have, and especially young people. And it's, you know, it's intolerable. And so, you know, we're trying to help reset the system bit by bit. We have to start somewhere because we can't fix everywhere, you know, at once. And so part of what we're really looking to do here is show results that hopefully we can take to other places. You know, it's hard to say in other parts of, you know, even the county, you know, is there, is there going to be consistency? Well, we don't know. And we don't know, we had to start somewhere, which is why this is so encouraging that we have this kind of connectedness and support and innovation going on. Because I've been to so many funerals and it hurts. Yeah.
One other question, I'm just wondering, so they had on the radio yesterday, some police departments, but they didn't name ours. In terms of if an addict walked in and said, I need help, that we could, they wouldn't be arrested, that they would be given help or directed to the right services.
Yeah, so that's a tricky situation for us, because we don't always have the authority not to arrest somebody. If somebody walks into the front door of our police station, they have a warrant that's signed by a judge. That's a warrant that's signed by a judge. We have to enforce that.
Oh, no, I mean if they walked in off the streets.
Yeah, if they walk in off the streets and they have a warrant that's signed by a judge, we have to enforce that. So this is all part of that process that we're working with the court, and we're working to try to address some of those things.
So if they're on there without a warrant being signed, just somebody says, I can't take this anymore, they skip school or whatever, and they walk in the front, you have to go to
And direct them, no. If they don't have charges or they don't have a warrant, we can direct them into some sort of treatment.
The program you're referring to is the one thing that I failed to mention when I was talking about FAN, which is Hope Not Handcuffs. And so we're working strategically to kind of develop a collaborative approach to that includes both of these pieces.
Well, to speak to that, this is already happening.
And it is,
So if
yeah.
somebody comes into the police department, as I spoke to earlier, they call GrowthWorks and we send a coach out. See, that's a tricky thing, because you have to remember that their title's public safety. So if someone comes in and no one checks a background, and they've got a serious felony possibly, a sexual criminal situation, or felony firearms, and they release that to a coach, and then that particular person is still out there and possibly can affect the community, that's scary. So, but what you spoke to without walking in off the street and they need help and they're clear, they're already calling GrowthWorks and we're sending coaches out there consistently. Mm-hmm.
Drug veterans handled the same way in terms of funding? I know they have the veteran courts also. Is that a separate court? Like is that handled differently in our courts?
A veterans court is a different court. I believe, Your Honor, they do run off the same type of guidelines.
Very similar guidelines. They have a peer coach also, a veteran. You have to follow, certain standards, practices, things of that nature. We often refer people who cook, so you don't have a veterans court. If someone comes through and it's a veteran, it's often hard. I was considering doing a veterans court. It's difficult to find out who's a veteran or not. And in speaking with judges who are involved with those courts, they'll commonly tell you, and it's just, apparently it's common amongst just people who serve or do serve. They don't just blurb it out, oh, I'm in the military or I was in the military. And it's hard to get them in your program because they'll come in front of you and you don't have any idea that's part of their history at all. And it's geared specifically for them. So what we do is if we have someone in that situation who is a candidate for it, we will send them over to the court in Redford, and they will screen the person, tell us whether or not they will accept them, and then we follow a certain procedure, and we'll transfer their file over to that court.
And Wayne has a mental health court as well. Mm-hmm.
Good job, everyone. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Good evening. My name is Greg Clifton. I'm a judge in Lincoln Park. Wanted to commend all of you for your efforts here. I do think it requires a team effort on behalf of police, the courts, health professionals, schools, in order to address this problem. To comment on Brian's statement, I agree the system is not set up to combat this. For that reason, in Lincoln Park, I got involved with the Families Against Narcotics group myself. I'm the president for the Downriver chapter. And what I've found is that the FAN is a good connector between the system and the people out there, to follow up on a couple comments. What do you do when you get out of recovery and you don't know where to go? You can contact the fan group. We have a ton of resources that we can point people toward to get help. So I think it's a partnership that makes a lot of sense between the public, government sector and the Families Against Narcotics group that I think we can all work together to really combat this. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Judge. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name's Glenn, 25-year Canton resident. A couple quick comments and a suggestion, perhaps. Thank you for doing all of this. I lost my only child 11 months ago, 25-year-old beautiful daughter, to a heroin and fentanyl overdose. Just, you cannot understand what that is. 5 years of in and out of rehab and all the things you talked about. So my one suggestion, you're doing incredible. I wish this existed 4 years ago. Please keep advertising it. I can tell you she had moments of clarities just like you talked about. Twice on a Sunday evening, I'm dialing, I'm calling, trying to find anywhere where she had that 3 hours where she said, okay, Daddy, I'll go. When it's always no, and we didn't find anywhere. I drove her all over the place and it just fell apart. So please keep this out so people understand, so we know where to call. The only other suggestion, I tried to get Narcan and I couldn't get Narcan. I knew she was in and out. I wanted it in a car. I wanted it. She died and the paramedics didn't get there in time. They gave her a bunch of doses. And to this day, I wish if I could have gotten Narcan. And I don't believe it's available in Michigan. I tried other states where I thought I've read that some of the states' legislatures have passed that you can get it at certain drugstores, and I was never able to get it. Does anybody know if it's available in Michigan? How do you, if a friend of mine how do I get it, or how could somebody else get it? Because I tried, I called CVS and I called in all their states where I thought it at that time,
So if
2 years ago.
If I could answer that, if you see me after this, the Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority has put on a huge push to try to get Narcan in as many people's hands as possible. So I can, guide that a little bit further. I'm in the process of getting more information on that, considering they've asked me to be a trainer for it.
But Dara, just microphone so that we can.
I just wanted to mention that our fan chapter, local fan chapter, is doing an Narcan training at Heritage Park on July 2nd. So Detroit Wayne Mental Health Authority is going to be donating all the kits, and so everybody that comes will get a free kit in addition to the training and a great night out. So, Thank you.
You could send me that information. We'll see if we can't help distribute that as well. Yep, thank you. Any other questions? I know it's been a long evening, but I appreciate your. All right, seeing no other questions, I want to take just a real fast moment and thank our panel for being here tonight. I also want to thank FAN and the others that came out to support this event, and more importantly, I want to thank our community. The community has always stood behind the Public Safety Department, has always supported us, and I think this is really a time where that couldn't be more beneficial. So on behalf of the Canton Public Safety Department, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Have a good night and be safe.